Good morning, everyone. I wanted to bring up the speculations that I've had about the Chris Watts case and my speculations, clarification on terms being used. I try to I try to give reference to my source of information in terms of reference back to where it is that I get these ideas or thoughts in terms of what a psychopath is or a sociopath, because the DSM-5 only it lumps them all together as antisocial personality disorder. So now there's only one term, umbrella for all these different types. But Dr. Todd Grandy, I'm going to give him credit right here if you want to watch his video. I actually linked the video that I took notes from on my last video underneath in the bottom of my last video. And he explains more in depth. Now, Chris Watts, by all means, he doesn't look narcissistic because he looks more like an altruistic psychopath. And of course that's an oxymoron in some ways. But he could be a covert narcissist or a reverse narcissist. The word reverse narcissism is coined by this other guy. I'm not trying to bring his name again, but Sam Vakning. All of these things become very complex and very complicated. But Dr. Todd Grandy has the credentials. He's a licensed clinical psychologist and he's also a scientist. He does research. So if you watch his videos, he explains that there's even psychopathy type 1, psychopathy type 2, and that's antisocial personality disorder. So yeah, Chris Watts can look like a narcissist in many ways. There is a great deal of narcissism and psychopathy. And there is narcissism to a great extent in antisocial personality disorder. And of course there is narcissism and narcissism. But for what I got from Dr. Grandy is in terms of violence and crimes, a psychopath is more likely to commit things in cold blood. Planned, systematically planned, so forth. And I think that what Chris Watts did, poorly as it might be, if he planned it poorly, I still think that there was some planning into what he did. He may have been toying with it. I keep saying he sent a doll covered, her head covered, the way the dead person might be, cover their face. He sent that to his wife. The kids wouldn't know about crimes and things like that at that age. They're only 2 and 3. It's very innocent. I doubt that the girls came up with that. He sent that to her. It was a message. And he did send to his co-worker, call it coincidence, but I'm not convinced that these are just coincidental things. He sent this picture of an explosion of a pipeline that happened in another state. And, you know, and Anadarko has had oil tank explosions before, and they get so hot, these explosions are so hot that within 300, I think they said 300 yards, and forgive me if I'm not giving the right numbers, it would destroy anything, melt, break, whatever. People were getting skin burns, 3rd-degree burns at a way at a distance. So you can get, it can be very destructive. Anyway, I'm basing my my thoughts on psychopathy, on the planning, the cold execution of things. Think about this. He did have those 45 minutes plus the 20 minutes packing his truck before he decided to kill his 2 daughters. I don't think this is spirit of the moment thing. And that is another differentiation that Dr. Ted Grandi, and that link that I posted on my last, and I'll post it underneath this one too, was saying that in psychopathy there's more planning, and sociopathy is more impulsive things, doing impulsive. You see an open window and you decide to break in. A psychopath might just stalk a victim and plan what he's going to do. So anyway, I'm not trying to be right. I could be very wrong. The terms covert narcissism and reverse narcissism and all these other different things are not, I don't believe these are terms included in DSM. But there's a lot now that is not in the DSM that people are discussing that is just popular stuff. Anyway, I'm trying to go a little bit with what information I get from someone that might have the credentials. Dr. Grandi has not talked about Chris Watts or specifically. That's been me just using information that I have, and I just simply, I know that this man, it was so convoluted because this man pulls the people's heartstrings, and you think that this is a poor man, and it's not a poor man. This is a very vile individual in terms of what he did. What I thought was, okay, you see these videos of Chris Watts, and at first you're like, everybody's like, this doesn't make sense. Then you look exactly at what he did. Let's just say it again. Killed the pregnant wife, killed the 2 daughters, disposed of the bodies in oil tanks, tried to cover up. The next day he looks cool as a cucumber, lies through his teeth all throughout, even at the very end, still confusing people. Then you go back and look at the videos again, and you see that there are things that are off. And once you look at the videos again, you see things that you missed the first time you see them. It looks like he's pretending. It looks like fame. And it looks like he manipulates the way even his own wife looks. He manipulates the way his own daughters look. And from my perspective, it almost makes it look like he is the victim of all 3 of them. Now, spousal abuse, I don't get it. I don't buy it. I think this man couldn't have relationships, was willing to do what he wanted, what he needed to do to have this beautiful life at first, because he was very quiet. He actually fit in some ways that picture of a psychopath. Couldn't maintain connect meaningful relationships. And I like to talk about this again too. Anyway, so he didn't have girlfriends in high school, had maybe two short-lasting relationships. Then he came Shanann, and he figured out, how to make her happy at a moment when she was very vulnerable and needed someone, and convinced her that he was a keeper because he was such a good husband. Nothing wrong with that, except for what happened, what ensued once, there was a new fling and the old one, how it lived, its usefulness, and he was ready for something new and different. I think that the thing with Nicole Kissinger, he might have thought that this was just going to be an affair, and then Kissinger might have demanded or done her own manipulation of things as well. And then he went to North Carolina and would not touch his wife because perhaps he may have been put on notice. I don't know. We don't know that. But anyway, the saying that, oh, the clear differentiation is that a sociopath is made by the environment and a psychopath is born genetically, that's oversimplifying things. We're more complex than that, more complicated. We're not just a product of our genes, and we're not just a product of our environment. It's a whole, we become a whole melange of different components of us. There's the environment. Yeah, we can become programmed. We can be programmed by our genes in many ways, or temperaments and so forth. But it's the consensus is that sometimes they don't know exactly what causes personality disorders. They believe, and I'm talking about experts believe, that it's a whole socio-biological, psychosocial biological thing where, you know, certain genes, you may have a genetic predisposition for things, then the environment enforces it. In fact, if you see the videos on this guy named Nelson, I think is his last name, he actually fits the profile by given that inventory that you can take the inventory, fits the profile of a psychopath, and he has the brain tomography, the CT scans that show similar brain activity, but he is not someone who has acted out on his psychopathy. He's a very productive, good productive individual. In fact, they were finding out that certain psychopathy might be a good trait in terms of the things that we might have qualms about, the normal people have qualms about. You know, perhaps having those traits might be those snipers that they use during war to take out certain very dangerous individuals. I'm rambling on, but what I'm trying to say is I don't think that it's that simple, like, oh, well, sociopath, and if there is environmental things, then that person is not a psychopath. They can be both. You can be a psychopath, and there can be environmental things in terms of upbringing, family dysfunction, and a very crazy family dynamics. I just heard that apparently Chris Watts was actually raised by his grandmother. It would be interesting to know more about his grandmother. And not, well, Cindy had at work. I haven't confirmed or verified that, but anyway, just wanted to bring in that whole thing about psychopath, sociopath, narcissist, and there is comorbidity. There's sometimes more than one disorder. He doesn't look to me like a narcissist, although he does do narcissistic things, but a psychopath has narcissism in them. And when I say that he has some narcissistic things, in a little bit he throws in like, oh, well, Shanann, you know, she was all over me and she was touching me and she was seducing me. He didn't use that word, but he was practically describing that she was trying to seduce him. When she got home at almost 2 o'clock in the morning from a long trip, was not feeling well, her friend reported that she had a terrible migraine, and I kind of find out what kind of pain medication she was taking. I can't remember the name right now, but it's not a narcotic or anything that would knock her out in any way. It's a simple medication that helps with migraines. You're not supposed to be driving when you take it, but it's not really something that would knock you out completely. I think she was face down, or she may have been on her side, and he turned her real quick on her stomach, straddled her, and may have choked her without her having her not being able to move and do anything to defend herself, and that's why he didn't have any defense. But anyway, in terms of his narcissism, he tries to make it like these two women were were after him, and so Jeanette coming in that late at night, so tired and so having health issues and not feeling well. Yes, right. She was trying to seduce him at that time, and she was, according to him. So that is a little bit perhaps narcissistic, and it's narcissistic how he tries to portray himself as such an altruistic kind of guy. In that sense, it might look a little bit like not reverse narcissism, but covert narcissism. But I think on the overall, I might try to coin the term altruistic psychopath. And I'm sorry to smile at that. I just think that some of it is so ridiculous in terms of this guy, this man. It's so slick, that probably something that makes him very dangerous kind of individual, so convincing. These are the kinds of people that convince, we said that they convince authority that they're making progress. Maybe he'll convince people that he really believes in the Bible, that he has seen the light, while he said, I'm not a monster. You would think he would say, I'm such a monster. I killed my 2 daughters. I'm such a monster. He said, no, I'm not a monster. He doesn't think he's a monster. He doesn't think what he did was monstrous. Does he? Or he's forgiving himself? It's so difficult to forgive yourself in something like this. So, until next time, if there is more, we'll talk.